I used to think of myself as a great romantic. I saw my life as an epic, cinematic quest for true love, a noble search for the one. I was the protagonist in a movie that was all about connection, passion, and finding my other half. I was a serial romantic, jumping from one intense, all-consuming relationship to another, leaving a trail of dramatic beginnings and equally dramatic endings in my wake. I told myself this was just the nature of a passionate heart, that I simply felt things more deeply than others. But that was a lie. It was a beautiful, tragic, and convenient lie I told myself to hide a much uglier truth. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for a mirror, and I was addicted to the reflection I saw in someone else's admiring eyes. My life was a series of overlapping love stories, each one following the same predictable, intoxicating script. It would begin with the chase, the thrill of the initial connection, the witty banter over text messages late into the night, the electric touch of a hand on a first date. This phase was everything to me. I was a master of the grand gesture, the thoughtful compliment, the perfectly timed, "I've never met anyone like you before." I wasn't just trying to win a person. I was trying to win a feeling. The feeling of being seen, of being chosen, of being the most fascinating person in the world. When I finally won them, the high was euphoric. In the early days of a new relationship, I would bask in their admiration. The way they looked at me when I told a story, the way they laughed at my jokes, the way they would say my name. It was a drug. It filled a deep, cavernous hole inside of me, a void I wasn't even fully conscious of. For a few weeks, or maybe a few months, I would feel complete. Their validation was my oxygen. I would absorb their interests, listen to their favorite music, adopt their hobbies. My identity would merge with theirs, not out of a sense of shared partnership, but because I had no stable identity of my own. I was a blank canvas, and I needed them to paint me into existence. But the high never lasted. It couldn't. As the initial infatuation inevitably cooled and the relationship settled into a more comfortable, realistic rhythm, the constant, intense validation would begin to fade. They would stop looking at me with that same wide-eyed wonder. They would start having their own problems, their own needs, their own lives that didn't revolve entirely around me. The mirror would start to show a more realistic, flawed reflection, and I couldn't stand it. As their perfect image of me cracked, so did my interest. I would grow restless, irritable, distant. I would start to find fault with them, manufacturing reasons why we weren't compatible. The truth was, they hadn't changed. I had. My drug supply had been cut off, and I was starting to feel the pangs of withdrawal. The void inside me would begin to reopen, and the only thing I knew how to do was to start looking for a new dealer, a new mirror, a new person to give me my next fix. And so, every relationship would end the same way, with a breakup that I would frame as a tragic, unavoidable heartbreak, but which was, in reality, a self-inflicted escape. I would leave them confused and hurt, and I would immediately dive back into the hunt, convinced that this time I would find the true love that wouldn't fade. But I was just a junkie, chasing the same high, destined to repeat the same cycle of boom and bust, leaving a wake of emotional wreckage behind me, most of it my own. The turning point, the moment my entire self-deception came crashing down, was a breakup with a woman named Chloe. It had followed the classic pattern. A whirlwind romance, a few months of intense adoration, and then my slow, cold withdrawal as the novelty wore off. I was delivering my usual breakup speech, full of cliches about needing to find myself, and "it's not you, it's me," when she stopped me. There were no tears in her eyes, just a profound, weary clarity. She looked at me, not with anger, but with a kind of sad pity, and she said the words that would detonate my entire reality. She said, "You don't love me. You never did. You love the way I look at you." The sentence didn't just land. It pierced through every layer of denial I had built around myself. It was the single most honest thing anyone had ever said to me. It was a punch to the gut that knocked the wind out of me, leaving me gasping for air in the sudden, stark vacuum of the truth. She was right. I didn't love her. I didn't even really know her. I had been so obsessed with her perception of me that I had never truly seen her. I had only seen my own reflection in her eyes. And when that reflection was no longer flattering, I was ready to throw the mirror away. In that moment, I saw myself for what I truly was. Not a romantic hero on a quest for love, but an addict. An approval addict, a validation junkie. My drug wasn't a substance. It was the feeling of being wanted, of being admired, of being the center of someone's universe. The chase, the conquest, the initial adoration, that was my high. The relationship itself was just the inevitable, disappointing come-down. The emptiness I felt after each breakup wasn't heartbreak, it was withdrawal, and I was about to go through the worst withdrawal of my life. That conversation was my rock bottom. I had to admit the truth. My epic search for love was a fraud. It was a desperate, pathological search for a feeling of self-worth that I was incapable of generating on my own. I was using people as a substitute for self-esteem. And so, I made the most terrifying decision of my life. I decided to get clean. I decided to quit. Cold turkey. I decided to be single. On purpose. Not single and looking. Not taking a break between relationships. But truly, intentionally, and for an indefinite period of time. Alone. It was the only way. I had to remove the drug completely to have any hope of recovery. The journey that followed was the hardest, ugliest, and most important one I have ever undertaken. The first few months were a special kind of hell. The silence was deafening. Without the constant distraction of a new romantic pursuit, I was left alone with the one person I had been running from my entire life, myself, and I didn't like him very much. The void I had been filling with other people's attention was now a gaping, howling abyss. My weekends were empty. My evenings were long. The urge to download a dating app, to text an old flame, to go to a bar and lose myself in the thrill of a new flirtation was a constant physical craving. It was a battle I had to fight every single day. There were nights I would lie in bed, my thumb hovering over the install button on the App Store, my whole body trembling with the need for a fix. I had to learn how to do the one thing I had never done before. I had to learn how to validate myself. I had to become my own source of approval. The process was clumsy and awkward. I started by doing things for myself and by myself. I took myself out to dinner at a nice restaurant. It was excruciating at first. I felt like every other diner was staring at me, pitying the lonely man at the table for one. I had to fight the urge to stare at my phone the entire time. But I forced myself to be present, to taste the food, to enjoy the experience for its own sake, not for the sake of impressing a date. I started celebrating my own victories. When I got a small promotion at work, my first instinct was to find someone to tell, to have them reflect my success back at me. Instead, I went home, bought a bottle of my favorite whiskey, and toasted myself in the mirror. I said out loud, "Good job. You earned this. I'm proud of you." It felt ridiculous, but it was also the first drop of water on a parched and barren land. Even more difficult was learning to comfort myself in my defeats. When I had a bad day or faced a rejection, the craving for external comfort was overwhelming. I wanted someone to tell me it was okay, that I was still good enough. Instead, I had to learn to be my own comfort. I had to learn to sit with the painful feelings, to acknowledge them without judgment, and to tell myself the things I so desperately wanted to hear from someone else. This period of intentional solitude was a slow, arduous process of reparenting myself. I was building, brick by painful brick, an internal foundation of self-worth, where before there had only been a void. I was learning to be the mirror for myself. The climax of this journey wasn't a dramatic event. It was a quiet, internal shift. After nearly a year of this solitary work, I was at a friend's barbecue. I wasn't looking for anyone. For the first time in my life, I was perfectly content just being there, talking to my friends, enjoying the day. And then I met someone. Her name was Emily. We started talking, and the conversation was easy and engaging. She was smart, funny, and had a passion for her work that was inspiring. And as we talked, I noticed something astonishing happening inside me. Or rather, I noticed what wasn't happening. I wasn't performing. I wasn't trying to be charming or witty. I wasn't thinking about what she thought of me. Instead, I was genuinely curious about her. I wanted to know what she thought, what her passions were, what made her laugh. My focus was on her, not on her perception of me. The desperate neediness that had defined all my past interactions was gone. There was no craving for her approval, no desperate hope that she could be the one to save me or complete me. There was just a calm, genuine desire to get to know another human being. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace. I realized I was finally ready for love, precisely because I no longer needed it to feel whole. The void had been filled, not by another person, but by me. Today, my life is different. Emily and I are building something together, something that feels more real and solid than anything I've ever known. It's not a fairy tale. It's better. It's a partnership between two whole people, not two broken halves trying to fix each other. There are days she looks at me with adoration, and it feels wonderful. But my self-worth is no longer tied to that gaze. It's my own. It was forged in the fire of solitude, and it's not for sale. The great lesson I learned is that you cannot receive a love from the outside that you are not capable of giving to yourself on the inside. Seeking validation from others is like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. It only makes you thirstier. True, lasting love doesn't fill a void. It only enters a space that is already full. You must become the source of your own approval, your own comfort, your own love. You must become the person you've been searching for. And what about you? What are you truly seeking in your relationships? Is it connection, or is it validation? Are you looking for a partner, or are you looking for a mirror? What would happen if you had the courage to be alone and to finally meet the only person who can ever truly make you whole? Yourself? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to read it.